Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Okay, so welcome back to the next lecture on performance review. We have been continuing our discussion on performance review since last two lectures, that is 26th and 27th, and we discussed a lot of issues related to the review. And we in the next the previous lecture we also talked about that how the review process is to be carried out. As a consequence to this review process, we move further and we add another word, that is discussion, performance review discussion. So, here we are going to discuss that once you are able to observe the performance, you have the performance data, you are going to review it with the supervisor. It is an integrated part of the review itself, and that is why it is known as performance review discussion. So, in this discussion basically we are going to discuss some other issues related to performance review, that how it is to be taken up. Now, I have taken it is taken from the web. So, I have taken two different examples just to explain what happens during the review process. Now, look at the first one. Okay. You have an employee and a manager, and the manager is communicated by the employees. He says that my performance review says I have trouble accepting responsibility. Is that my fault? Now, that is to be discussed that who is going to be at fault. Once in the review you say that yes, you are at fault because you do not take responsibility, and then supervisor communicates back, subordinate communicates back to the manager that it is my fault that I have not taken the responsibility, or you have not given me the responsibility. Now the question is that who is at fault, right. So, that is to be discussed threadbare. It is simply not reviewing the performance, but also discussing it, that why did it happen. So, here during the discussion and analysis we will be discussing about these issues, that why certain things happen and certain things do not happen. So, during the review process probably it would be clear. Now, you look at another cartoon which says that it has taken from onet.com, and it says that I need to talk to you about your performance. Who is that? Is the supervisor, right. Then I guess lack of self awareness is as good a place to start as any, right. What does it mean? Why? I am one of the best people you have. Now, when you say that I need to talk to you about my performance, and then he says that you lack self awareness, then you give a feedback that, or you communicate back to the employees that why I am one of the best employees or the best person you have. It means that he thinks that he is one of the best employees, but what the supervisor think that no, you do not understand yourself better, right. So, it is harder when they do not see it coming. It means that when as a subordinate you are not able to understand what your performance is. Now, during this during the review process, it is quite often that these kind of comments are made by the employees and the supervisors both. Okay. Why I have picked these two cartoons just to suggest that what goes on during the review process. Okay. So, only review is not enough. What I am trying to tell you is that after the review you try to understand that why this level of performance is achieved and what happened. Okay. So, during this communication or the discussion process between the employee and the supervisor, some of the issues may come up at the fore or the front to see that what happens, right. Now, look at this. Okay. Now, this talks about two different kind of review, okay, where you have marked the date, right, for mid year review, that is 15th of September sometime, right. Then end of the review, which is marked at 30th March. Now, look at the comment that is given below. Is the employee says that I should have done what 3 months ago, right. It means that there is something wrong with that, right. Then at the end of the year, the leader, the manager says, did not we revise your goals 6 months ago? right. It means there is something wrong with either the performance standards or the goals that is to be achieved, or they did not go for some kind of adjustments, right. And that is why there is lot of confusion that is going on, right. If you are not going to discuss performance on a regular basis, okay, this is some of the problems that you have for annual reviews or semi-annual reviews, right. But if you are going to have a more frequent review and more frequent discussion with your subordinates on a regular basis, then some of the things that is given at the right side will come up, right. So, you are thinking about development related to the performance. So, always think about the development, what next, whether your goals will help us or not, what kind of support you require, what do you want to learn. So, if you are asking these questions on a regular basis and in conversation with the employees very frequently, then that is more desirable. Like, what are you doing? Let us see what happened. Okay. Yeah, let us discuss what happened. What do you learn? Right? What next? So, if you are going to ask these kind of questions, what will happen? Probably you are in a regular conversation with the employees to make him understand what kind of support is required, what he is learning, what kind of help would be required, and you are going for a regular discussion, especially to see that employee's performance improves and he is able to develop himself, right. Now, we are talking about two different kind of systems here. One is where you go for more frequent regular reviews and discussions of the performance, and the left hand you have review or discussions that happens only twice a year or maybe annually. Now, if you look at the stark differences, probably the kind of questions that can be asked on a regular basis does not happen. For example, if you have gone for a mid-year review and you find that the person is not able to perform well, you have made some adjustments to the goal, but at the end of the year the person is not able to achieve the goal, and you say that even after revisions you have not been able to make the goals, right, or you have not been able to achieve the goals. But if you do it on a regular basis, frequently interact and discuss and try to identify what kind of support is required, probably in a better position to see that the person improves his performance and is able to develop himself, right. So, when it comes to developing performance, it is very and it is very important that you go for more continuous feedback, review and discussion of the employees, right. So, that some of the issues which comes to the fore are clear and there is no gap in the communication to the employees. Now, coming to the performance review discussion. Okay. As a part of the review, when you move to the discussion, what happens? You try to find out, yes, what has happened during this. Okay. So, during the review, what happens? You identify why did it happen, what are the things that affected the performance in a positive way or negative way. For example, if you are going for annual review, the employees does not get much chance to interact and relate themselves with the supervisors, and supervisors are not able to communicate frequently with the employees what is happening. But if you go for a regular review, probably that would help, right. So, one factor that you can identify which can affect the performance is continuous feedback and review of the performance, right. Other factors could be related to the supervisor, could be related to the infrastructural support, could be related to the knowledge and skill of the employees. So, there could be a lot of factors that could affect employees either positively or negatively, right. So, when you are going to have a review and discussion with the employees, you have to see that yes, what is your performance, how it is going to impact other things that is related to you in terms of your say goals and objectives. So, when you are going to focus on appraisee, that is the subordinate and his performance, it means that how it is affected by you as a supervisor, because you are going to provide leadership, support, guidance. So, whether these factors has affected the performance of the employees or not. So, you are not going to discuss what led to positive or negative performance of the employees, but you also see that in what way other factors have contributed to the performance, including supervisors, right. So, when you go for performance review and discussion, you discuss all these issues in a important way. So, why see when you are talking about appraisal of the employees, right. that is development of the appraisee. AE stands for appraisee, okay, and AR is for the appraiser. So, AE means subordinates are the employee and AR means the manager, right. So, because see if employees are developed by the supervisors get more insight into the behavior, and they will be able to analyze that what went on, what factors facilitated or inhibited these kind of things, right, and giving feedback whether it is really helped the employees to improve their performance or not. So, whether it has been able to help their interpersonal relations or personal performance or interpersonal competencies like communication, leadership, decision making, problem solving, right, understanding himself in relation to others, his emotional intelligence. There could be lot of factors which require improvement on the part of the individual, and whether feedback been able to help that in the process or not, right. And it also helps the employees to set goals for improving the performance of the employees, right. So, because this, since it is to be discussed in a more empathetic environment where you feel from the employee's perspective, right, and you also share and discuss the tensions, the conflicts, the concerns and the problems. Okay. What kind of problems you went through while doing your job, okay. What was your concern, whether really committed and dedicated to it or not, or whether your mind was something where else. So, what kind of conflict you face at different levels. Okay. It could be interpersonal conflict, it could be intrapersonal conflict, or it could be a group conflict or intergroup conflict. There could be different kind of conflicts that you might face in your job, right, and what kind of tensions you had. Okay. It could be related to your lack of ability, or lack of support, okay, or lack of guidance from the supervisor, okay, or lack of infrastructural support. So, there could be a lot of issues which could provide tension to the employees, right. So, in the process you will be able to discuss all such issues related to the review of the performance, because once you have achieved a particular level of performance, okay, and if you fall in those categories, right, that is developing and requires improvement. See, we have been able to identify certain categories of performance, right. We identified top performers, we also identified dilute performers, we also identified those who need development, they are developing and requires improvements. So, now we have been able to identify 4 different kind of employees based on performance review, right. So, based on this performance review, when you are able to identify, then you move to the next stage, that is what we call discuss, right. So, when you discuss, you will be able to identify factors related to good performance. Okay. So, for each of them you are able to identify factors related to performance, okay, especially related to personal, professional, right, then organizational, then supervisory, right. So, there could be a lot of factors which could be identified which have contributed to the performance. In the next lecture probably we will talk about these kind of things, that when we go for analysis and discussion and see that how did it happen. So, the basic idea of discussion here is that identifying who has done what is the level of performance that is achieved, and then when you move to the next level, that when you want to go for discussion of the performance, you see that what are the factors which have contributed to good and bad performance. Okay. And that really helps employees and supervisors both to understand each other very well, okay, and that is why we move further to the next stage. So, the idea here is that both the employees and the supervisor in the discussion are in a position to see that what has happened. So, the employees communicates about his concerns, his conflicts, his problems that he has faced, the kind of tensions he has, and it is the responsibility of the supervisor to get into the shoes of the employees. So, they need to think about these things from the employee's perspective, not from the supervisor's perspective, right, because the employer's perspective and the supervisor's perspective could be different, right. Employee think on a different line, supervisors are going to think from a different lines, but when you come together you have to think from each other's perspective, right, and then see what needs to be done, because when you are going to decide about the kind of problems that he is facing and when you are going to review the progress of the employees, you can suggest from his perspective that what best can be done, and then you can ask him, get his feedback, okay, in order to solve this problem how we can proceed, you tell me that how we can proceed. Okay. So, these kind of questions probably would be able to help to achieve your objectives from the employee's perspective, not from your perspective, and then you see what is your perspective, how you can look at it. Okay. So, probably if you integrate these two perspectives, it would be better, because now you have looked it from his perspective and now you are going to review it from your own perspective to get an idea that what needs to be done in order to improve the performance. And that is why this review need to be done, and there has to be a discussion to look at the performance, right. So, when you go for discussion, basically there are three different stages that we have to go through, right. Part of that we have already talked about, but again I am going to recapitulate it here, right. So, the three major things is related to communication, influencing and helping, right. So, during the communication basically you are going to listen, respond and give your feedback, I have already talked about it. Then influencing, you are going to enable the appraisee to exercise more autonomy, okay. You are going to provide more positive information first and then negative information at later stage, and then you are going to identify what kind of problems the person is facing, and finally, you are trying to help it out. Okay. You have concern, empathy for the appraiser, right. Then you are going to look at the mutuality of relationship, that how both of you are able to adjust the goals and objectives by building trust and confidence in each other, by building rapport with each other, right, and then you are able to identify the development needs. So, looking at this further, like communication is very important, especially the entire discussion depends upon the effective communications. How you ask questions, what kind of questions you are asked, what kind of questions does not help, what kind of questions are going to help employees, right. So, in order to ask questions from the employees, do not ask questions which would stop him from responding, right, where he will feel more defensive, right. For example, you are going to ask very critical questions, okay, basically to criticize or reprimand, or you have doubt on the ability of the employees, then probably he will not be able to respond, or he is going to be very defensive. Similarly, if you want to test his knowledge and skill, then he is going to be defensive, okay. Or you want to ask certain question, you want him to dissent, then that is a problem. Or you want to ask certain leading questions, and then you want to open up and come out with the response, probably these kind of questions that does not help. So, make sure that you are going to ask those questions which are really helpful. Okay. The idea is to clarify certain things related to the performance of the employees. So, it is always good to ask open questions, and let us see what employee says, right. So, the way you ask questions is very important, and what kind of questions should not be asked. Then coming to the feedback, how you give feedback to the employees, right. And it is not, if it is going to effective, if it is descriptive, not evaluative, you are not going to make any comment on, but you simply give the feedback, okay, this is your performance, is related to your competencies of the behavior, not to the individual itself, right. And make sure that you have data support related to this, so that you are able to show the evidence that, okay, look at it, this is what is suggested, right. So, it has to be suggestive, not prescriptive, okay. And as I told you earlier also, that you go for a more regular feedback, and you also solicit help from him. So, and the idea is basically to help the employees to improve the performance. Why ultimately you are going to do this entire exercise and review and discussion? You evaluate the performance, send it to file HR, and then HR is going to look at it. They are going to provide the reward and performance. But when you are going to talk about a good performance management system, and make sure that it is strategically aligned with the individual and the goal of the organization both, then the idea is that this kind of performance management system is supposed to help the individual to grow and develop himself. It is for the development of the employees, right. So, with this assumption probably you are proceeding, and that is why we have called it a strategic performance management, not simply performance appraisal or evaluation, right. So, the idea is to see that how you can help the individual to change his behavior and attitude leading to better performance, right. So, you go for rechecking, verifying those things that has happened or not has happened within a given time frame. Okay. And then you also invest in building a good relationship with the employees, because that contributes a lot to the performance of the employees, right. Because lot of things depend on the kind of relationship supervisors and subordinates have with each other. If you have that a relationship that is based on trust and confidence, things definitely improve. It is with the relationship is not based on trust and confidence, things does not work out, right. So, these are the very important things, and make sure that when you are going to communicate performance or giving feedback, it is taken care. Okay. See, when an employee receives feedback during the discussion, sometimes he becomes defensive. It means that he is trying to defend himself in terms of his performance. Okay. How he is going to do it? Sometimes this is not correct what you are telling, or this is not what I have done, right. So, these kind of questions come up, or sometimes he is trying to rationalize it by giving say certain examples. So, no, I have not done it, and this happened because this was not possible, or the support was not available, the machine was not working. So, he is always given try to rationalize or try to give reasons for this kind of performance, right, or he try to project it to somebody else. Okay. So, there could be a lot of examples of defensive behavior that could be made by the employees, and that is related to feedback, right. Sometimes he is and if he immediately acts on yes, this is what I have done, okay, that is also a kind of defensive behavior, right. So, you need to explore it more and more, that why did it happen, okay. Because if it is not opposing at all, and you are giving your performance is this on goal 1, your performance is very bad, on goal 2 yes sir, it means there is something wrong, probably you have not been able to go and explore in deep his behavior, that why did it happen, okay. And cynicism, that is very important factor, okay. He is really a skeptic about what you are talking about, right, and he is opposed to any positive critical attitude. So, if you are going to give any constructive suggestion, he will not accept it. So, make sure that he is not going to make these kind of behaviors, and if employees and managers are aware about these kind of things, probably you will be in a better position to give feedback during the discussion process. Okay. So, it is a sequential process. First you build the rapport, then you explore the employees, and then you talk about the action plan, right. Otherwise, what will happen? He will be defensive, will not be able to do it, right. So, in rapport building, you attend to employees, try to understand his needs and expectations, listen to him and accept it as it is. Whatever the employee has done, you accept it. Then at the next stage, you go for exploration. What kind of problems he has faced, try to identify his strengths and weaknesses. Then you go for diagnosis, that what needs to be done in order to improve the performance, and finally, you move to action plan, see what needs to be done, what are the alternatives that is available. So, you search for alternatives, then take a decision, and then you provide all the support that is required. So, when you go for performance review and discussion, basically if you follow these sequential steps, probably it will be more effective and the discussion would be more fruitful, right. Now, when you are going to when you are not going to use it, okay, do not review and discuss without being sought, right. If it is not required or employee does not ask for it, do not go for it, because then you are not going to get or have any kind of value addition. Basically, you are going to limit your value, right, or the value of the entire process. Okay. Or suppose if it is not a part of the performance management process, then the employees will not give any credit to these kind of things, and if you are going for it, it is not going to be useful. So, make sure that employee understand why this review and discussion is happening, what is the objective or the purpose of this, in what way it is going to help them to improve their performance. So, you are talking about some kind of value addition through this process of performance management, right, otherwise not, right. Another issue is when they have serious emotional blocks, okay, especially with the supervisors, and this happens when the relationship is at stake or the relationship between the two is not good, right. So, you need to identify what kind of emotional blocks have been created in terms of understanding the supervisor by the employees, or how supervisor understand the employees, and these emotional blocks can be removed through training in these areas. For example, you can suggest a problem solving session to discuss about the kind of emotional maturity or emotional understanding would be required between the supervisor and the subordinate, right. For example, you make sure that the employee understands the supervisor well, supervisor also understands employees very well, they are aware about their own strength and weaknesses, both the supervisor and the subordinates. So, self awareness, okay, self regulation, self understanding, right, and also understanding others and their behavior is very, very important, because if you are not able to remove these kind of emotional blocks, then probably it is not going to be useful. It means that you have certain mental blocks which is going to block any kind of understanding that you would like to have, okay, and then probably will not be able to understand what the supervisor is saying. And similarly, if supervisors also might have these kind of mental blocks, in that case they will not be able to better understand their employees. So, both of them need to understand these kind of blocks that would create a better situation to understand themselves and others. So, that you can create a relationship that is based on trust and confidence, not based on suspicion, right. So, it is very, very important that you remove these kind of emotional blocks that is created by the employees. Okay. Then, if you have not understood the kind of expectations that you have from this kind of discussion, so it is always good to go for some kind of pilot testing before you actually take up this session, okay, so that they are clear, okay, this is how the review and discussion session happens, okay, and make sure that you are not going to allow any kind of arguments during the discussion process, right, because sometimes these arguments turn into fights against each other. So, ensure that these kind of things does not happen, right. Otherwise, what will happen? You argue, you make a comment, then the other person try to defend, then you also try to defend. So, this would create a situation which becomes much more illogical and irrational, and it does not take anywhere, both of them, right. Thank you very much. ठीक, तो 25 ही मिनट का था डिस्कस करने के. Thank you very much.